Charlie Watch or Charlie Paris, depending on where you see the brand, is another brand that I have to admit I was not familiar with at all, even though they have apparently been around since 2014. Doing some research, they started out with quartz pieces and they worked up to producing automatic, like this Charlie Paris Concordia. Now, at first glance, it's a pretty unassuming watch. It's a minimalist dive watch with a thin bezel and a large crown. But when you look closer, you see that the case design, especially from the side, looks very much like a Tudor Black Bay, and the case back states made in France, and the price comes in at about $920. A lot to unpack here, so let's get to it. Now, as usual, on screen, you will see all the specifications. And as typical with this style of watch, you are getting a 40 millimeter case and a 47.5 millimeter lug to lug. To start out this review, I will mention I really did not know the price until I was starting to get ready to do this video. Now, you may think this sounds silly, but with the amount of review watches that come in, I don't always remember the price of each one, especially watches I'm not familiar with. Now, why am I mentioning that? Well, because I really thought this was around a $600 watch until I looked it up and saw that it was a $900 watch. It does have a Swiss Soprod movement, so no, not the Soprod Newton movement that is having a lot of issues, especially in the Serica dive watch, but more on the movement in a bit. Now, this is what I would call a minimalist diver, as I said in the intro, and when looking at it head on, it might remind one of an Oris 65, or the original Christopher Ward C65, or countless other vintage style watches that draw inspiration from the 60s or 70s. But if you turn it to the side, you will see this case much more resembles a Tudor Black Bay. And what you will also notice is that the case finishing on the sides is blasted, almost frosted actually, which is strange considering the rest of the watch is a combination of brushed and polished. Now, this is not the first watch I have seen emulating the Black Bay style case, but the finishing is a little different to say the least. Now, I do have to say, I wore this for a full weekend and then intermittently for a week. And like I would wear any other watch with a leather jacket that has zippered sleeves, driving around the house, in the studio typing, etc., the normal things we do. And I have to say, at least to the naked eye, I cannot see any marks or scrapes in that finish. So at least from what I have experienced, it is decently durable. I do want to note that there are many different colors of the Concordia, and depending on which one you are looking at, they will have either an all polished case or vertical brushed, and I believe this Tundra version is the only one to have that blasted case sides. The crown is probably the most unique part of the case. It's tapered, easy to grip. It has a cool design on the crown face. And overall, I like the design of the crown, and it definitely stands out on a case design like this. The bezel is thin, so thin that it's not easy to grip, and the insert is aluminum. But it does add to that vintage style of it, and of course, at this price, some would expect ceramic or sapphire, but I do quite like the look of anodized aluminum. I always have, and I like the silver color of this one for this Tundra or white dial version. Where it concerns the dial, again, I believe this is a one-off for the Tundra version, as there are countless versions of this watch, some with standard sunray dials, some with gradient dials, some with no bezel, quartz versions as well. So you'll want to take a look at the website if you like the case, but this dial color or texture isn't doing it for you. The dial texture is like a sand texture, and most times we see this done with black or darker color dials, and I really like how it looks in white. The rest of the dial is fairly simple: applied markers, brushed steel hand, and a personal favorite of mine, a date at the 6 o'clock position. Above that dial, we have that box style dome sapphire, again, similar to others that have used this style of watch, and I think it fits the look, and as always, I like this type of crystal on these vintage inspired watches. This model comes in either quartz or automatic, and there is a significant price increase for the automatic versions, like around $550, as some of these quartz models are $375 in comparison. This one uses the Soprod P024. It's based on the ETA 2824 and also very similar, of course, to the SW200. Same power reserve at 38 hours, 28,800 vibrations per hour, and the accuracy, as it states on the Charlie Paris website, is minus 0 to plus 14 seconds a day. I found this one to be around plus 8 seconds a day. Now, one funny or interesting thing I found is on the website description for this watch. It says equipped with a quartz Swiss automatic movement. Now, obviously, that's a typo they didn't catch, but some novice watch buyers might be confused by that. Before we get to the fit and how it wears, we have to talk about pricing and the bracelet. I said earlier I didn't remember the pricing initially when this came in, and when I did look up the price, I couldn't believe the cost, and that is mostly because of this bracelet. The case itself is well done. Again, it's a little generic except for the crown, but it does have a Swiss movement, so okay, good to go there. But there is no way to mince words here. This bracelet does not belong on an almost $1,000 watch. It is your basic oyster style 3-link. It has the thin and sharp, cheap clasp. And yes, you do get quick release pins, but this is a bracelet I expect on a $300 watch. Yet as we all know, you could buy a watch, such as a Helm watch, with a much better bracelet than this. The optional, it is not included. The optional canvas strap isn't much better. It's thin, it's weirdly not overly flexible, and it has a cheap looking polished buckle. On my 7.5-inch or 19.05 centimeter wrist, the watch fits fine on both the bracelet or strap, though I don't find either very comfortable. The bracelet, especially the clasp, it rubs into my wrist, and the strap, it's just okay, but again, not something I would want on a watch of this price. And lastly, we get to the lume, which isn't too bad, honestly. It looks good in the dark, but it's only going to last about an hour or two before completely fading out. So this watch is a little strange for me, and when looking at the price, the design, and all the components, I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure about that price, to be honest. The biggest downfall of this piece is the bracelet and the strap. They're absolutely not up to par with other watches in this price range and watches well below this price range as well. The black bay case design doesn't bother me that much, and I have an affinity for this vintage no crown guard style of watch. I just think if it had a much better bracelet, this review would come off a bit different. Also, one more thing, it states on the case back made in France, and then on the website it states assembled in France. A little fast and loose there in my opinion, and more than likely I would hang my reputation on it that it is manufactured in China, as are countless other micro brands. Let me know what you think down in the comments below of this Charlie Paris Concordia. Your opinion matters, and I want to hear from you. After you comment, make sure you like and subscribe. It is free and it really helps out the channel. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter to keep up with everything in between reviews, or if you would just like to chat with me there as well. This is Don Evans from Watch Report. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.